I do everything by memory, so this will go well. Let's see. So GitOps, I'm going to talk about GitOps. Okay, it worked. I just need to check. So who am I? Why do I speak about GitOps? Is it because I'm famous? No. Well, not for this at least. We won't talk about that. So who am I? I'm going to... first of all, my name is Robert. Hello. Nice to meet you all. This is the first time that I speak in public in Oslo because I moved down during the COVID thing. So I've been doing all virtual stuff, and it's really fun doing jokes and have no laughs because you're alone in a room. So I'm gonna see how that feels and see if that actually gives me some confidence. So yeah, I work as a cloud architect at Crayon, currently at Crayon Group, which means he's on the top of Crayon. So I work with all the different countries and all the different companies. I am a Microsoft MVP. Yay. And also I'm a HashiCorp ambassador. Yay. A little less yay, but it's getting there. We're closing it. I'm social stuff, so please follow me there. I'm not going to talk a lot about me, but obviously I'm here because of DevOps, and how I think about GitOps is kind of like a continuation of DevOps, right? So we started at a certain path, and it kind of evolved to something. And, you know, in the past, before even DevOps was a thing, we kind of did everything like this. I don't have a clicker, so I have to go back there. Some of you probably still do this. I had to set up a virtual machine to log in so I can get this screenshot. So I rarely work in this manner now, but obviously people are still doing that, and you know, that's a viable thing. But at a certain point, the idea of DevOps kind of came into it, and we started taking developer practices and started doing operations through that. And we had this kind of like a loop thing. Some do it like Infinite Design, but I couldn't find that in PowerPoint. Now we develop code, infrastructure as code, for instance, and we build that or run stuff on that code, and we test it and we see that everything works and get it out there. I'm saying the past because obviously this is going to continue to be a thing for a long, long time. I'm not saying that, but there's a term that came up during this that's called GitOps, and some of you might think that you're doing GitOps, and I'm here to tell you that you don't. Ooh. So is that GitOps? Well, no, it's not GitOps. And why is that not GitOps? And I'm not sure if... I'm just making sure, sorry. So just because you have things in Git, this works really bad without a clicker, and you automate that, that doesn't mean you're doing GitOps, right? Some might think it, but that is not actually GitOps. So then we go on to what is GitOps. And GitOps the term came from a company called WeWorks. WeWorks kind of coined the phrase and really explained everything, why they're calling it GitOps in this blog post, which is now very old in computer world, so 2017. And if you go through it, they kind of explain why what we're calling GitOps is GitOps, and what kind of makes GitOps, and started to kind of word some principles that they followed to why is what they are doing GitOps. And I'm going to come back to principles because we take that further on these days. This is the present. But to explain that, I need to kind of go into a CNCF project called Open GitOps. So what is Open GitOps? This is a small screenshot of the screen, but sorry. But this is the website, opengitops.dev. Open GitOps is a CNCF project that came out of the GitOps working group, to just keep on term with keep the marketing terms. And as it says on the tin, it's a sort of open source standards, best practices, and community-focused community-focused education. And what we are trying to do, I probably should have said that, I'm in GitOps working group working on the Open GitOps project. That's why I can talk about this. What we're trying to do is define, first of all, we define 4 principles, just to clarify what actually GitOps is. Obviously during events, so we had on the 2 last KubeCons, we had also a GitOps Con, That's the day 0 event. Good success, a lot of good people talking there and explain how they do GitOps. And the further we get along, well, there's a lot of things that we're talking about, but I can see that we kind of get like some standards in, some patterns, some reference material for people to work on, maybe even a white paper, even that usually takes a year to write and no one has the time, but we'll try to get something out there. But the most important part of Open GitOps is that we kind of defined the principles. So, what are the principles? I'm going to go through them one by one, only 4, so, it doesn't take that long. So the first principle is that for you to do GitOps, you need to be declarative. So what we reference here is that not just infrastructure as code and everything like that, but you need to declare the current or the state of the system that you're running. Obviously, Kubernetes and stuff like that comes into play here because that's usually what people do to do this because it's much easier there. But this applies for everything as long as you get these principles. Doing GitOps. So the system that you're managing is, if you manage it by GitOps, you need to have a declarative definition of the current state of that system. Number 2, it needs to be versioned and immutable. So the version that you see in Git or whatever else you put your stuff, you can do it in other places. Just Git is the most common one. The desired state that you store there needs to be immutable, which means that you don't change the current state. You make a new version of the current state. So whenever you do a change, that's a new version, which is great because that means you can just everything went to not curse, sorry. Everything went to hell, and you can just do a git revert, and you're back. Because you have a version state that actually works that you can go back to. It needs to be pulled automatically, and we reference software agents in this text. This took like almost a year to get down to this brevity. It was really hard. A lot of geeky people trying to not use a lot of words for stuff that didn't work that well. But we reference to software agents, and that's just to keep everything open. What it means in practice these days, at least, is having some sort of controller or operator in a Kubernetes cluster. That's usually how it works. But obviously, if you can put a software agent on any system and do these things, you're winning the terms there. And again, this kind of differs from the usual pipeline scenario, because in the pipeline scenario, you usually have a change in code which then triggers something, or something. It's the change that triggers something. It's not a software agent that looks for a change and then completes the process. And speaking of which, continues to reconcile is a word I always mispronounce. We have software agents installed that observe the current state and attempt to apply. And then obviously you get errors and stuff like that, and there's always a caveat, and always sometimes you have to SSH into stuff, unfortunately. But these are the principles, and these came out of the WeWorks originally, more or less this way. But through the Open GitOps project and the GitOps working group, it's not only WeWorks, because it's a CNCF project. So you can't have a project led by one company that decides something. It needs to be there's rules for that. So the Open GitOps project is WeWorks, obviously, Microsoft, Red Hat, Amazon, and GitHub, and also Crayon. Yay! So we're in there, and CodeFresh. Shouldn't forget CodeFresh. All right. What are the benefits, you might ask, or not? Deployment speed. We already had pretty good deployment speed, right? Because we have these pipelines that do stuff. But pipelines usually have a long process. There's something you check your code, you're doing something with that. You might deploy it somewhere, so we need to contact that point, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. With GitOps, what we are proposing is to have these software agents much more closer to where it's supposed to be. So for instance, if you have something installed, again, I have to go back to the Kubernetes example, but if you have your operators and controllers on a Kubernetes cluster and you do a change, they're already there. They just change, what's close to them. So as soon, well, obviously you have time to you set up, at what interval you do stuff. But as soon, you do your change, it should automatically be the current state. And you're supposed to be confident that the thing that you have in Git is actually what's happening in your system. It's easy to secure, and by that I mean, obviously, usually these things happen on the system that it controls. So you don't have to, pass in secrets. You don't have to connect to somewhere to get something. That usually happens inside of the system that you're controlling. Again, practical example, in Kubernetes, you would have your secrets there instead of having, and give, service account access to certain things. And you would set that up with, HashiCorp Vault or whatever you do to get your secure secrets secured. Documentation. And this is a thing that I usually say about infrastructure as code as well. That it's, one of the things I like about infrastructure as code is that you have your documentation on how things are. You don't need to write that down because you've already written it just in code, which is easy to read. The problem there is that infrastructure as code then goes through a process. So you can't really say that the thing that you have in your code is what happens in your system. Along the way, someone changed something. Along the way, someone, a pipeline broke. Something happened. So you can't really say that, 100% is probably is documentation. But you can't say 100% that is documentation. But as Git is the one source of truth, the current desired state of your system, it actually can be documentation. Uses tools that developers are familiar with, which is always a good idea. In the name it says Git, so obviously Git is part of it, but the state doesn't have to be stored in Git, but it's somewhere versioned and immutable. But so we all talk about shifting left, shift security left, shift everything left. At a certain point you fall off the edge, but you need to shift everything left, and one of the things you can shift is the testing. You can the review process, pull requests. And at the point where someone says, this is okay, it happens. So everything is shifted left. As soon as you say that this is what's supposed to happen, it happens. Doesn't work snapping in a big room. Also, it's flexible. So whatever software agent that you use, you can use something else. It doesn't have to be that one thing. And you define usually, for instance, with Kubernetes, you define your manifest the same way. It's still the same Kubernetes manifest, right? So what happens if you change out what actually applies that? Nothing. So you can choose tools, you can expand it. You want a different operator to do something else, just update a CRD somewhere to deal with that. You can do that. You can expand, and you can remove what you don't need. Primarily open source driven, yay. Because this actually comes from open source. So yeah, the company that created, let's say created the term, also had a tool called Flux, which they used internally, which then they donated to the CNCF. So that's an actual, open project. You can go and contribute to Flux if you want, and everything's done through the open source standard, and that's basically true of all the, at least the biggest GitOps tools that you have. And it's a great community. And I don't say that just because, I'm part of it, and I sit in these meetings nodding. Well, I'm actually halfway asleep because it's usually late in the night. But it is a great community, and you get a lot of help. Every single tool that you can call GitOps have a great community, and the GitOps, community itself is pretty great. So, if you're betting on a community, bet on GitOps, I guess. All right. So just to reiterate the GitOps workflow, big fancy arrow. You add or update your declarative manifest, I call it. So it kind of, in retrospect, that doesn't make sense when we don't talk about Kubernetes, but sure. You store it in Git. Doesn't have to be Git. Just have to be a version control and immutable storage. The source controller sees the change, usually. Maybe not in some cases, but usually. That updates the custom resource that does the things, and then a different set of controllers see that this is what's supposed to be going on, and then if that is not what's actually are going on, it's going to fix it. So basically what you're doing is this. That's pretty easy. Tools of the trade. Again, not sure how I'm on time because I keep talking fast, but let's pretend that everything's okay. So tools of the trade, the two on top there, obviously Flux CD is the OG GitOps, and you have Argo CD, and as far as I think the history there is someone wasn't pleased how Flux went, so they kind of made Argo. Because why not? But both of them are now in the CNCF, so they're actual projects that are controlled by that governing model. So obviously, again, there's no one company that controls either of these, which is good. Then you have some other tools, Piped, which the last time that I made this slide, I just found, so I don't know what it is. Fleet is from Ranger. And they also do a lot of cool stuff, and Fleet kind of looks cool as well. I haven't tried it. And then I have Jenkins X, which might sound like Jenkins, but apparently it's not. All right, common questions, so we don't have to do that later. Does it have to be Git? No, I keep telling you. No, it just needs, again, to be a version-controlled, immutable storage. So that can be whatever you want. Obviously, you need something to actually look for changes. But for instance, Flux can actually, you can have it in an S3 bucket or a storage account if you want. I don't know why, but that's something you can do. Is it only for Kubernetes? Again, no. But it's so much easier to talk about this when referencing Kubernetes, because that's kind of where all the, not to say development, but most of the people that are doing GitOps usually do it with Kubernetes. So it kind of just makes it easier to talk about. But if you can run a software agent somewhere that looks at an immutable versioned declarative piece of code and then can fix whatever you point it towards, you got GitOps. So make something cool. Some service stuff, I guess. Does GitOps work in all scenarios? No. Nothing works in all scenarios. That's kind of weird. I don't know why people think that, but obviously this is not a thing that solves everything. This is a operation model that is extremely flexible, extremely quick, and obviously for the people that usually use this, which is developers, it's very familiar and it's easy to understand. But you might work in somewhere where you have some compliance stuff. You might need to, maybe you do, I know certain people do GitOps in prod and dev and stage, but then, no, not prod, but dev and stage, and then in production they actually use something else that has a little bit more control. So you can mix and match. All right, coming in on the home stretch here. The future. What does the future, because I said past, present, and future, so I need to talk about what's going on. The way that I see it, there's going to be more community efforts into standards. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an open GitOps certification, for instance. If you want to say that you are doing GitOps, you could go and go through an audit of some sort. I don't know who's going to do that because I don't have the time. And then you get like a badge. So you're doing GitOps. But obviously, standards is one thing, is certification, whatever. But there's going to be a lot of description of patterns. If you're on Azure and do GitOps, this is what you do. If you're on AWS and do GitOps, this is what you do. Or if you have your own server structure, this is what you do. We're going to get more of those kind of things going forward. More technologies GitOps enabled, I say, as that actually makes any sense. But I wrote down controllers and operators, or software agents, as I'm supposed to be calling them. But basically all the major cloud vendors that have Kubernetes clusters are doing something with GitOps. They're making it easier to use GitOps. They they are like they try to enable people to do that, and that happens more and more. So it might not only be people adding functionality through things that are running that we can reference, but also actually, the platform itself might all of a sudden, offer GitOps as a thing. Even higher adoption. There is a lot of people doing GitOps, and if you look at a GitOpsCon video, there you're going to see a lot of people that actually are doing GitOps. But the more things getting standardized, the more things are getting described better, the more adoption we're probably going to see. I hope people that aren't doing GitOps here will be at least looking at doing GitOps in the near future. So how do I get involved? Well, if you are on the CNCF Slack, I wrote down one channel, which is wrong because I think there's 5 for the working group, and also there's an open GitOps. So pick the one you want to be in. I think I'm in all of them. So you can go to github.com/opengitops. Open-GitOps. I still waiting for them to claim the name Open GitOps because someone stole that right after the project went live. That's kind of funny. CNCF have people for that. Obviously talk about GitOps, which is what I'm doing. Even though it's a black and white presentation and not really fancy. And obviously contribute to your favorite open source tool. That's always a good thing. We need more people, being part of the tooling. That just makes sense. We get to a better place at that point. And that's basically what I have. So I have this usually, but we're gonna do that in the open space.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.